Most men are not destroyed by obvious villains. They are quietly worn down by patterns they failed to recognize early. This video is built on a simple but uncomfortable truth. Not every woman who feels exciting, emotional, or full of potential is safe for a man's future. Some women do not intend to ruin a man's life, yet through unresolved habits, emotional immaturity, and chaotic thinking, they slowly dismantle his peace, focus, and discipline. The goal here is not to attack women, but to protect men who are building something meaningful and do not yet understand how easily that can be lost through the wrong attachment. A high-value man does not choose based on chemistry alone. He observes behavior, listens to patterns, and pays attention to consistency over time. Low-value traits often hide behind charm, vulnerability, beauty, or drama. They do not announce themselves loudly. They reveal themselves quietly, through repeated behaviors that most men excuse because attraction clouds judgment. That is why spotting these signs early matters. Time is not refundable. Energy does not regenerate easily. And peace, once disrupted long enough, becomes difficult to rebuild. The first hidden sign is this: she never takes responsibility. In her version of reality, problems are always external. If she is single, men are immature or cruel. If she is broke, the world is unfair. If her life feels messy, someone else caused it. There is always a villain, but it is never her. This is not bad luck. It is a refusal to self-examine. Responsibility feels threatening to someone who has built their identity around victimhood, because growth would require admitting past choices were flawed. When responsibility is avoided, mistakes are repeated. The same emotional loops play out with different faces. The same arguments resurface in new relationships. And each time, the explanation sounds convincing enough to earn sympathy. Men fall into the trap of becoming the reasonable one, the patient one, the fixer. Slowly, they start apologizing for situations they did not create, just to restore peace. Over time, that peace never fully returns because it was never built on accountability to begin with. A woman who cannot own her past will not protect a shared future. Accountability is the foundation of trust. Without it, there is no learning, only denial. Chaos becomes familiar, even comfortable, because it removes the pressure to change. A man cannot build stability with someone who benefits emotionally from disorder. A high-value woman is not perfect, but she is honest. She admits when she is wrong. She reflects instead of deflecting. She adjusts her behavior rather than rewriting history. She understands that responsibility is not punishment, but power, and that difference determines whether a relationship becomes a place of growth or a slow emotional drain. This distinction becomes even clearer when we look at what she builds her identity around, which leads directly into the next sign. The second hidden sign appears in how she defines her own worth. A low-value woman builds her life around how she looks, not who she is. Her self-esteem rises and falls with mirrors, compliments, likes, and attention. The phone becomes her primary source of validation, not communication. Beauty is no longer a trait she possesses, but the core of her identity. When attention increases, she feels alive. When it fades, anxiety quietly takes over. There is nothing wrong with caring about appearance. The danger appears when appearance becomes the only currency she trusts. Inner development feels slow and invisible, so she avoids it. Character does not deliver instant feedback. Discipline does not produce applause. Integrity does not trend. So she invests where the rewards are immediate. She curates image instead of depth, approval instead of self-respect, desire instead of wisdom. Over time, Authenticity is traded for attraction, and attention replaces peace. Men often misunderstand this. They confuse outer glow with inner stability. They assume beauty signals confidence, emotional health, or value in reality. Beauty without substance often masks insecurity. A woman addicted to attention will always need an audience, even inside a relationship. Admiration becomes a daily requirement, not a bonus. And while admiration fades naturally, the energy it drains from a man does not. This is where many men feel uneasy but cannot articulate why. They notice subtle competition for attention. They sense that validation from strangers carries emotional weight. They feel like presence alone is never enough. That discomfort is not jealousy. It is intuition recognizing instability. When attention is her fuel, peace becomes optional. The relationship must constantly perform to survive. A man should ask one quiet question and listen carefully to the answer revealed by her behavior. Does she want to be loved? Or does she want to be admired? Love requires vulnerability, patience, and self-exposure. Admiration requires spectacle. If admiration is her priority, intimacy will always feel shallow. And shallow bonds do not protect men when life becomes difficult. A high-value woman appreciates beauty, but she does not depend on it. Her confidence comes from self-respect, not reflection. She can sit in silence without feeling invisible. She does not need constant confirmation to feel secure. She invests in character because she understands that looks open doors, but integrity keeps them open. When a woman's identity is anchored in attention, conflict often follows. Because ego becomes fragile, that fragility reveals itself most clearly in how she communicates. Which brings us to the next sign. The third hidden sign reveals itself through communication. She argues more than she thinks. Conversations that should lead to understanding slowly turn into combat. Small disagreements escalate into emotional debates filled with interruptions, exaggerations, and reactive statements. Listening becomes rare. Winning becomes the goal. Logic is abandoned the moment her ego feels threatened, and emotions are weaponized to regain control of the situation. These arguments are not about truth or resolution. They are about dominance. Being right matters more than being accurate. Being heard matters more than understanding. She reacts before she reflects, speaks before she considers, and escalates before she listens. Over time, every discussion becomes exhausting. The man learns that calm explanations lead nowhere. So he either withdraws or submits just to end the conflict. This pattern quietly erodes respect on both sides. The man loses respect because he feels unheard. She loses respect because she interprets calmness as weakness. Engagement becomes a trap. When ego drives conversation, there is no winner. Even if a man proves his point, he loses energy, peace, and attraction. Arguing with ego is always a double loss. High-value men understand a critical rule: never wrestle with ego. Ego feeds on attention. The more energy you give it, the stronger it becomes. Many men believe constant communication will fix emotional tension. In reality, excessive explanation often amplifies chaos. Silence, distance, and emotional boundaries speak louder than debate. A high-value woman understands this instinctively. She speaks less and thinks more. She pauses before reacting. She values clarity over control. Silence does not threaten her identity, because her worth is not built on dominance or validation. She is capable of disagreeing without creating war. She understands that calm is power, not weakness. Low-value women often mistake intensity for connection. They believe emotional fireworks mean passion, In truth, peace is the rarest and most valuable emotional state in a relationship. Chaos feels familiar to those who have never learned inner stability, so they recreate it through constant friction. Men who stay too long in these dynamics begin to change. They become defensive, irritable, and emotionally drained. Their focus shifts from building to managing. That is when a relationship stops adding value and starts consuming it. This communication pattern is closely tied to another, more dangerous trait, one that ensures the same chaos repeats endlessly, because lessons are never truly learned. That brings us to the next sign. The fourth hidden sign is subtle but devastating over time. She never truly learns from her mistakes. Her life follows repeating cycles that look different on the surface but feel identical underneath. The same toxic relationships, the same emotional chaos, the same heartbreaks after each collapse. She claims growth, healing, or awakening, yet avoids the uncomfortable reflection that real change requires. Her stories are filled with villains. Every ex was controlling, narcissistic, or emotionally unavailable. All men are described as toxic. Yet she continues to choose the same type again and again. This is not bad luck. It is poor pattern recognition. When responsibility is avoided, lessons cannot be integrated. Pain becomes something to escape, not something to understand. Instead of pausing to ask hard questions, she rushes toward new thrills, new attention, new excitement, anything that helps her forget the discomfort of self-confrontation. Growth demands stillness. It demands honesty. It demands admitting that familiar choices created familiar outcomes. Many people say they want healing, but what they truly want is relief. This is where many men make a costly mistake. They believe their presence, patience, or love will become the catalyst for her transformation. They see her pain and assume compassion will inspire growth. In reality, no one changes until pain becomes louder than comfort. And if chaos feels familiar, growth feels threatening. Men who attempt to rescue often absorb her unresolved patterns. They begin managing emotional fallout that was never theirs. Over time, her instability becomes their instability. Her unresolved past quietly rewrites their future. A high-value man understands a hard truth: you cannot fix what refuses self-confrontation. Change is an internal decision, not a relationship benefit. Distance is sometimes the kindest and smartest choice, not as punishment, but as self-preservation. A high-value woman shows evidence of learning. Her past choices look different from her present ones. Her language shifts from blame to insight. Her standards become clearer. Her behavior becomes calmer. Growth is visible not in words, but in patterns. When someone refuses to learn, their future is predictable, and predictable chaos is not destiny. It is a warning. Before committing deeper, a man must also look at direction, not what she wants, but how she plans to get there. That leads directly into the next sign. The fifth hidden sign is revealed when you ask about the future. She has no plan, only desire. Her vision sounds poetic but empty. She says she just wants to be happy, free, loved, or successful, yet cannot explain what structure, routine, or sacrifice that would require. Goals exist only as emotions, not actions. Direction is replaced by impulses, and accountability is disguised as restriction. Desire without discipline creates instability. She confuses impulsiveness with self-expression and calls inconsistency following her heart. Any form of structure feels suffocating. Routine feels boring. Long-term effort feels limiting. So life becomes a sequence of restarts. New interests appear and disappear. Projects begin but are rarely finished. Energy is spent on weekends, moods, and moments rather than foundations. This lifestyle often looks exciting from the outside. It feels adventurous, spontaneous, and free. But underneath, nothing is anchored. There are no roots, no systems, no continuity. For a man who is building, this contrast becomes dangerous. He sacrifices, delays gratification, and plans long-term, while she floats between phases, driven by feelings. Men often mistake this instability for creativity or passion. Over time, they realize it is simply avoidance. Avoidance of discipline, avoidance of patience, avoidance of responsibility. When pressure appears, she escapes. When effort is required, she redefines freedom. A high-value man understands that peace is built through structure, not impulse. A high-value woman understands this too. She respects routines. She values consistency. She sees discipline not as control, but as protection. She understands that freedom without direction becomes chaos. You cannot build a future with someone who has not planned their own life. Shared dreams require individual responsibility first. Without it, the relationship becomes another temporary phase rather than a stable partnership. This lack of direction often connects to something even more revealing: the people she surrounds herself with. Because no one exists in isolation. Character is shaped, reinforced, and limited by environment. That brings us to the most unexpected sign. The sixth hidden sign is the most unexpected, yet the most revealing. She chooses friends who keep her weak. A person's true character is rarely exposed through what they say about themselves, but through the circle they protect. Look closely at the people she surrounds herself with. Are they focused on growth, responsibility, and progress? Or are they trapped in gossip, complaints, endless partying, and emotional stagnation? A low-value woman often selects an environment that validates her, not one that challenges her. Her friends agree with her even when she is wrong. They reinforce her excuses. They amplify resentment instead of accountability. When she complains about life, they echo her frustration. When she avoids responsibility, they reassure her that she is just misunderstood. Growth becomes dangerous in these circles because it threatens group identity. This is why attempts at self-improvement rarely last. The moment she shows interest in stability, discipline, or a man with standards, the group reacts. Suddenly, structure is labeled control. Boundaries are called insecurity. A high-value man is framed as restrictive or manipulative, not because he is, but because his presence exposes the group's lack of direction, instead of rising to a higher standard. The circle pulls her back down to familiar ground. Fear of loneliness plays a major role here. Cutting off weak company requires strength. It requires the courage to be alone long enough to outgrow old patterns. Many people would rather remain surrounded by noise than sit with silence. So they settle for average company and stay trapped in drama they secretly resent. Men often underestimate this influence. They believe their connection with her exists in isolation. It does not. Dating her means inheriting her environment. Her friends shape how she interprets events, how she reacts to conflict, and how she listens to advice. When challenges arise, their voices become louder than yours. And if those voices are rooted in stagnation, the relationship cannot grow. A high-value woman understands this cost. She is willing to lose old company in exchange for progress. She chooses fewer friends with stronger values. She allows her environment to stretch her, not soothe her weaknesses. That decision alone separates growth-oriented women from those who remain stuck. This is why so many men feel confused years later. They were not battling one person, but an entire mindset reinforced daily by an environment that rewarded chaos and resisted change. Understanding these 6 signs is not about judgment. It is about protection. And once you see the pattern clearly, the final step becomes obvious. Not to save, not to argue, but to choose wisely. That brings us to the final message and how a man protects his future. Many men do not lose themselves because they chose an obviously bad woman. They lose themselves because they chose potential over reality. Low-value women rarely look dangerous at the beginning. They appear emotional, misunderstood, or almost there. They speak about growth, healing, and wanting something serious. And because the man sees his own discipline, patience, and depth, he assumes those qualities will naturally pull her upward. This is where years are lost. The wrong woman does not ruin a man through betrayal or explosions. She does it slowly. She disrupts his peace first, then his focus, then his discipline. The routines he once protected begin to bend around her moods. His standards soften to avoid conflict. His energy shifts from building to managing emotions that never stabilize. Over time, he becomes a version of himself he no longer recognizes. And by then, leaving feels harder than staying. This is why protection matters more than passion. High-value men are not defined by how deeply they feel, but by how clearly they think under emotion. They do not rush to rescue, explain, or prove themselves. They observe patterns instead of listening to promises. They understand that behavior reveals truth faster than words ever will. When instability repeats, they do not negotiate with it. They step back before attachment turns warning signs into blind spots. One of the most dangerous beliefs men carry is that love can force transformation. Love does not create growth. Pressure does not create maturity. Change only happens when a person chooses discomfort over familiarity. A man cannot drag someone into self-awareness. He cannot outwork someone else's avoidance. And he cannot sacrifice his future to prove his loyalty to someone who has not chosen accountability. High-value men set standards quietly. They do not announce them. They live by them. And when those standards are not met consistently, they walk away without drama, not out of anger, not out of punishment, but out of self-respect. Distance becomes a filter. Chaos cannot survive where boundaries exist. This does not mean becoming cold, dismissive, or emotionally unavailable. It means becoming grounded. It means recognizing the difference between empathy and self-betrayal, between patience and denial, between attraction and alignment. The right woman does not require you to abandon yourself to keep her. She adds peace instead of testing your endurance. A stable man creates a stable environment. In that environment, low-value dynamics feel uncomfortable and eventually leave on their own. High-value women, on the other hand, feel safe, respected, and inspired. They do not fear structure. They appreciate clarity. They grow alongside discipline instead of resisting it. Never trade peace for potential. Never mistake emotional intensity for connection. And never ignore patterns simply because walking away feels lonely in the moment. Loneliness passes. Losing yourself lasts much longer. If this message resonated, it means your instincts are already awake. Stay observant, stay disciplined, and protect your future with the same seriousness you once gave to earning love.